Welcome to Lift Your Story podcast with guest Keith Blakemore Noble, UK's #1 Fear Strategist. Hi everyone, I am Lorianne. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada. I am with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas, and welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we welcome Keith Blakemore Noble, and he is the UK's #1 Fear Strategist. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank you both so much for having me here. It's wonderful to be joining you.
So Keith, how did you become a fear strategist?
Great question. We might as well start there. It's as good a place as any to start. Obviously, I haven't always been helping people conquer fears. Before this, I actually worked in IT for 20 years and did quite well in IT. But I used to be painfully shy. I guess you'd say probably it was social phobia I had. I was terrified of speaking with strangers, which is one of the reasons why IT worked so well for me, because you're just hiding behind a computer the whole time. Brilliant. But no matter how good your career, you eventually reach the point where it's not what you know, but it's who you know that gets you those higher opportunities. And because I was terrified of speaking with strangers, I would actively avoid going to all the seminars and the networking meetings and all these sort of things. I actively avoid them because they were terrifying. And so my career plateaued eventually. I was running a department. I had people reporting to me in 3 different continents, but there was nowhere further to go. And it was okay. But in personal life, things were, as you can imagine, quite lonely. When you're terrified of speaking with strangers, how can you make new friends when you can't even meet people? And for me, things came to a head. I went to a Christmas party one year, which was a bit misguided, and I ended up having a panic attack. I fled the building, and I decided at that point, you know what? You cannot go through life like this anymore. What's life going to be like in 10 years' time if you carry on like this? And that was the moment where I realized I had to do something. Didn't really know what. I just knew I had to do something. And shortly after that, there was a 2.5-day personal development event, free event in London, which a friend pretty much dragged me along to. I very, very nearly chickened out, very nearly ran from that. But my friend said, no, I will stay with you the whole way. I promise you're not going to leave me. No, I'll be with you the whole way. Well, I'll give tonight's bit a go. I'll see how I get on. I'm making no promises. But I went there and I really enjoyed it. And we all made various breakthroughs through it. Now, obviously, being a free event, they have to make their money somehow. Their aim was sell you into their NLP and hypnosis and coaching trainings, which is fair enough, nothing wrong with that. But I really, really enjoyed the event, got a lot out of it, kind of realized, this stuff seems to work. Maybe I could learn more of this and use it to sort myself out and then boost my IT career. That was my plan. So me being me, I signed up for everything they offered, took the top package, the NLP, the coach training, the hypnosis, speaker training, trainer training, the whole lot. Thoroughly loved it. I found I was actually really rather good at it as well. To the extent that other people in the class were going, oh, you're good at this, whenever we did stuff together. At first I thought, that's just what you say to each other, right? Yeah, you're not so bad yourself. Nice. But after a while, I kind of started realizing everyone I work with says that to me, but they're not always saying it to each other. Maybe I am good at this. Told some friends what I'd done, and they said, oh, can you use that to help me? I remember the first person I told said, can you use that to help me get over my fear of spiders? Of course. So we did it. They're absolutely fine with spiders. Realized I was good at this and I enjoyed this. And in IT, I was starting to get a little bit bored of it. For 20 years, you probably would get a bit bored. I was thinking it would be nice to do this as a career, but I've got the high-paid IT job. I've got the outgoings to match. I can't really afford to give up my job and take a pay cut and become a coach and build things up from scratch. And then the most wonderful piece of luck, I was called into the office one day, and the director of the site said, "Sorry, Keith, because of the financial situation, we're having to get rid of some positions, including yours. Your position's redundant. Here's a wheelbarrow full of cash, never come back." Like, huh. If ever I was looking for a sign, this was it. It never even occurred to me to go and find another IT job as a fallback position. It was like, okay, I'm going to be a coach now. And I carried on using the skills that I was developing and refining, helping more and more people, and turned it around and built up coaching. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I've been doing that for 11 years. And I focused on fears and phobias because that was how I got into this. That was where my experience, my own journey was. So it made sense to really focus on that. And that's how I became UK's #1 fear strategist.
That's an interesting story.
And I think that there was one thing that really stuck out to me when we met previously was that you said people have even fear of colors.
Yes. I mean, people, a common question is, what's the most common fear or phobia people have? And then inevitably it gets onto, what's the most strange fear or phobia someone's had? And the reality is, people can be scared of anything, because we're not born scared. We're not born with any fears at all, but we learn them. And we learn it as we're doing our best to make sense of life, to make sense of the world, and to figure out our place in it and how to interact with it safely. We learn phobias, we learn fears by either through a deeply unpleasant experience, scary experience, or we observe others. Like if a parent always freaks out when they see this strange 8-legged thing running across the floor, we quickly learn that's how we react. We see one of those, we freak out. Got it, I can do that. Yay, go me. We've learned to be scared of spiders. Or we get taught it. Parents or guardians teach us fears, aiming to keep us safe, but unfortunately goes overboard and teaches fear. So we can be scared of literally anything. And even something like a color. That there was someone I knew of who had a phobia of the color yellow. Seeing things which were yellow broke them out into that cold sweat, the panic, the rapid breathing, feeling terrified. I mean, you can be scared of literally anything. Fortunately, things like that are a lot rarer than the usual type of phobia, but you could be scared of literally anything. And the good news is, because a fear or a phobia is something you've learned, the good news is you can learn different ways of behaving. You can learn to be able to not be scared of whatever it is that scares you. So it's always possible to completely conquer fears and phobias, sometimes really quickly as well.
So what is the difference in a fear and a phobia?
Great question. A phobia is a specific type of fear. It's an intense, irrational fear of something that doesn't pose you a threat. So if somebody were to point a gun point a gun at your head, most of us would quite rightly be scared. That is a very valid fear because there is an immediate risk to life and limb there. But seeing a spider running across the floor on the far side of the room, for people with a phobia, they get the intense fear. They get terrified. They might be rooted to the spot, all these sorts of things. But it has no rational basis because that thing can't hurt you. There's nothing it could do. And very often people, when they have phobias, they know they're irrational. They will even say, it's like, I don't know why I'm scared. It's irrational. The thing can't hurt me, but I'm terrified. That's what makes a fear into a phobia. It's intense. So it's not just as a, oh, look at that. That's not very nice. But it's like, really intense, irrational fear of something that poses you no risk or actual harm. That's what makes it into a phobia.
Okay.
And when we work with people to help them overcome their phobias, it's not about instilling total, utter fearlessness, because that can be counterproductive. I mean, for example, when I help people conquer their fear of heights, afterwards the person isn't going to be able to go, hey, you know what, I'm going to climb up the tallest building and just run across the tallest roof because, hey, I feel that is dangerous in itself. You would still have a healthy respect for heights. You still have a healthy respect for the dangers. So if you were up high and not tied onto anything and it was swaying around, you would probably still be scared. And that's absolutely fine because that's a healthy respect. There is a real risk. But you wouldn't be petrified just standing 3 rungs up a ladder, for example. So it's all about still having a healthy respect for dangers, but not to the point where it overwhelms you such that you freeze or you just panic and run.
It's interesting you mentioned fear of heights because I was in construction and I was on a building. I was maybe 21, and it was about 30 floors up, and they had the deck down, and they were still run the steel up, and we had to go up and run these cables for the elevator, and so I'm up there, and I'm scared to death of heights. So, and there's this iron worker. He's about my age. He's up there running across these beams. They're like 2 stories up above the deck. He's, come on up here, help. I said, no, I'm sitting there. I'm still sitting down, scooting along that beam. You know, I mean, I'm petrified. I really am. But I mean, those guys, they're up there. They don't care. It's like there's no fear for those guys. You know. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's most people would probably never reach that level of comfort with heights, but it's good for them that they're just totally unfazed by the height, and they would still be taking safety measures. They would still be doing what they feel needs to be done so that they're safe, so that they're not gonna fall. So they're still gonna be taking safety measures. But yeah, I mean, we've probably all seen the classic black and white photos from the skyscraper boom days of New York, with that all the guys sat there on a beam 1,000 feet up in the air. It's not, but it feels like it, just casually munching away on their packed lunch. Like, what? Are you crazy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know fear of heights is big, and there's a lot of different ones. But what about is it agoraphobia, where you're afraid to be out in people?
Yeah, agoraphobia, depending on how you pronounce it. Yeah, fear of being in open spaces or being outside. And yeah, that can be a very debilitating one for a lot of people, because you end up kind of feeling trapped in your house. For people who have it severely, they can't even open the front door and step outside. It's just such a massive fear. And it can even, if it gets really intense, be such that you couldn't even go into a big room, because that big room is still too big, and it's scary. You need to be in smaller rooms. Fortunately, that's very rare, but even for people with agoraphobia, it's quite rare that it's that bad. But it can have such a massively limiting effect on people. And again, it is, for people who have it, it is a very real fear. Something people often not realize. If you don't have a phobia, you don't realize just how truly scary and terrifying and limiting that it is. It's not like they're not making it up. They're not pretending to be scared of this thing. It truly is terrifying, which is why it annoys me. Sometimes you'll see people, they have a friend who they know is scared of snakes. So they'll take great delight in throwing a toy snake at them to watch them freak out. And that is actually cruel. That's not a nice thing to do to someone. It's not funny, because it really is terrifying for that person. And it's like, no, don't do that.
Do you help people with fear of public speaking?
Oh yeah, yes. I've helped a few people with quite a few people with that over the years. It also neatly fits into one of the other things I do, which is to train people to be speakers. And as you can imagine, when you're training people to be speakers, they have a lot of fear to overcome. So that the two work closely there. But yeah, I mean, there was a lady who has works in a network marketing business, and she was doing really well. and so well that the European headquarters of that particular company, they were putting on the Europe-wide event for all of the affiliates, and they invited her to come along and speak and share some of the tips and techniques that she used to really build up a strong, solid team and get really good results. And she knew that this was a great opportunity because, hey, it's a great opportunity to be seen as the expert amongst your peers. But she was terrified. 600 people there. Oh, so fortunately we knew each other, so we did a session. And it was a single session because most of these, for single or simple fears, a single session, it's gone, it's done. So we did the session. She went out to, I think it was Germany. She went out to wherever it was anyway, stood up in front of the 600 people, did a good presentation, kind of enjoyed it, did so well that she was immediately booked to appear at several other regional events. And now God, you can't shut her up. She's always out there speaking on stages and doing really, really well. And that's just one example. Another example of people who often have kind of fear of speaking in front of people. If you go to networking events where you have that bit where you stand up for a minute and tell everybody about yourself, for a lot of people, that's really nerve-wracking. You can see them kind of trying to read from the script and their hands sort of fidgeting on the table and stand behind the chair to kind of try and distance themselves. One session, get over their underlying fears, and they relax into it, deliver their talk, really connect with the people who are there, and it has a positive impact on the business because the impression that people get is of someone who is calm and confident and, hey, this is the sort of person I want to talk with. I want to find out more about them. So yeah, speaking in public can be anything from standing up on stage in front of huge numbers of people to standing up in a network meeting, or even standing up in a meeting at just normal work. Whether you're the boss and you're having to lead the meeting, or you're kind of wanting to say, have we actually looked at this? This could be a bit of a problem. And to have the confidence to be able to stand up and share what you're thinking. It can be quite nerve-wracking for a lot of people. And when you overcome it, it opens up all manner of opportunities as a result.
What is your most memorable or say strangest things you've done to help people?
Ooh, two examples spring immediately to mind here, so I'll be brief with both of them. The first one, certainly the most memorable, was a lady who has a beautiful singing voice. She's been trained at some amazing schools. She wanted to be a performer, but she was terrified of the thought of standing up and singing to people. It's kind of a bit difficult if you want to be a professional singer and you can't stand out in front of people and sing. So we had to now. There was a whole combination of misunderstandings where we were arranging to meet, which is a whole thing, a whole different story. We ended up meeting at the back of London's Parliament Square. Excuse me a second. So we ended up meeting at the back of Parliament Square in London, and I don't know if you know Parliament Square. There's lots of grass and so on. There's various statues around. And around, certainly at the back of it, there's lots of flowers and flower beds and some nice secluded seating spots there. So we sat in a quiet spot there, and we did our session. By the end of it, I asked her, so how would you feel about standing up in front of people and singing out? And she said, yeah, I could do that, which is a massive difference from 3/4 of an hour earlier, where just the thought of it, you could see her going, oh, no. Oh. Yeah, I could do that. So tell you what, go on then. Stand up now and just give us a song in front of all these people. She went, all right then. Stood up in Parliament Square and sang a Beyonce song, unaccompanied, unplanned, in front of a lot of very bemused but appreciative tourists. And she thoroughly enjoyed it. Which was a massive change for her. So that's probably the most memorable one that I've got. Just seeing this person going from, oh, I can't sing in front of people, to belting out a song in front of everyone. Yeah, I'm singing. Yeah, enjoy it.
Well, did the tourists give her a good applause and
she got random applause when she finished. Yes, which was good. She should have had a hat. She could have had a hat out and made some money for it, but there we go. And what a stranger one was a lady in New Zealand, because I work with people through Zoom, and I have done for years, long before the whole pandemic and everyone discovered Zoom. We've been still using those sorts of things even before then, which means you can work with people around the planet. And there was a lady in New Zealand who is a dancer, professional, or becoming a professional dancer at that point, but she had a very strong phobia of vomit, which also meant she was terrified of the thought of being in a situation where people might vomit. And where this really held her up, it kind of held her back a little bit. It got a lot of nerves before going on stage. Ooh, what if I get real stage fright and feel nauseous? But the bit that really held her back was she couldn't fly. Because what if we're on the plane and there's turbulence and somebody next to me starts to feel sick and they're sick and they're in the little bag? It kind of put her off flying, which when you live in New Zealand, bit of a problem, because everywhere is a long way away. Everywhere is. So we did our session through Zoom, got her over that phobia. So she what do you think now about vomit? Fine. A few weeks later, I got a message from her. Hey, just thought you'd like to know, I'm at an audition in LA. I flew over last night, loved it. Wow, well, there you go. Something she'd not been able to even kind of contemplate before. I mean, flying from New Zealand to LA was just out. It was far too long a flight. She did it. So yeah, it's always interesting. The changes people make to their lives when they just overcome and conquer these lifelong phobias that have been holding them back for so long.
Yeah, that's going to be very rewarding for you. I mean, you're saying you can do a lot of this stuff in like one session.
Yeah, for I'm going to say simple phobia, by which I mean just where there's only one phobia. I mean, sometimes you can have 2 or 3 phobias that are kind of interlinked, and that can get can take slightly longer. But yeah, if it's a single phobia, heights or vomit or color or performing in public or spider or whatever, a single session completely gets rid of that phobia. One time that springs to mind where somebody had a complex phobia, they thought they had a fear of flying, and we went through all of the stuff. They were still feeling a little bit nervous about it until we discovered they genuinely used to have a fear of flying, but they also had a fear of heights. But they didn't realize they had the fear of heights because it was the flying that was totally freaking them out. But we kind of realized it when we were talking about some other stuff. And they realized, actually, you know what? I can't even drive over a bridge. Oh, man, I'm scared of heights as well. So we did that as a second one, and the whole lot's gone. They're flying everywhere, driving everywhere, having a whale of a time. But yeah, usually it's a single phobia gone in a single session. The fastest was a lady in Australia who was petrified of snakes, completely conquered that in under 10 minutes. That is the exception. It's not the rule, but just goes to show it can be done really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that has a lifelong fear, all their life they've been afraid of whatever, and then all of a sudden in an hour, they're over it. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
It is, yeah. And the interesting thing is once you got rid of it, sometimes it can take a little while for the rest of your mind to catch on to the fact that you have got rid of it. You know those memory foam mattresses,
mm-hmm.
where if you push down for a moment or two, take your hand away, there's still the indentation of the hand. It takes a few moments to pop back up. That's kind of like what goes on in our mind. So we conquer the phobia, but the rest of the mind still assumes we're going to have that phobia. So even though we don't get scared, the rest of the mind's going, there's a spider. We're probably going to get scared any minute now. It's going to kick in. It takes us a little bit to get used. And I can give a great illustration of that. Lady who's terrified of spiders so scared that she couldn't even go to the bathroom in her own house if there was nobody else there, in case there was a spider there. Because if there was a spider in the bathroom, there'd be nobody to deal with it. So she couldn't even go to the toilet if there was nobody else around in that house. We did have, I could tell by the end of it, she was completely with spiders, because anytime we talk about them, there was just no real reaction at all. So I asked her, how do you feel about spiders now? She said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm scared of them or not. Okay. She said, I'd have to go home and see a spider to know if I'm scared of it. Now that already tells you this lady is no longer scared of spiders, because previously it would have been, do you want to go home and see a spider? No. So I said, okay, tell you what, go home, see what happens, let me know the next day. Spoke to her the next day. She says, I still don't know. Okay, what happened? Well, I went home, I went looking for a spider to see if I'm scared of it, and I couldn't find one. I still don't know if I'm scared of them or not. I said, oh, wait a minute. You went home, you actively looked for a spider, actually went out of your way to look for a spider, you're disappointed that you didn't find one, and you're still not sure if you're over your fear of them. She goes, yeah, I suppose, when you think of it that way, because the rest of her mind was still used to the fact that, oh, if we see a spider, we'll freak out. The bit that did the freaking out doesn't do the freaking out anymore. That bit just goes, ha ha, spider, carry on. But it took a little bit of time for the rest of her mind to catch up and go, oh, I get it. We're not scared of spiders anymore. Oh, no bother. And that can happen with any phobia. It just takes the rest of our mind a bit of time to catch up to the fact that we're not scared of it anymore, which can be an interesting situation to be in.
I have a quick question, because I know, in a sense, anxieties are some sort of fear, and some people can't even put a finger on what it is that's causing them anxieties. Do you help people with that as well? Because really, ultimately, it's some sort of fear of something inside that usually causes anxiety.
Sure, yes. So yeah, anxieties, you're right. They have very, very similar symptoms to intense phobias and to strong fears. And you're right, there is some fear underlying it all that's, I won't say in every case, because everybody's different, but very often for anxieties, there is something that you're scared of underneath. And it can be really, really hidden really deeply, because your unconscious mind is going, no, this is too scary to deal with. It hides it away. So you're not even sure what it is, but you just know, and you get these feelings, and the same sort of the adrenaline going, and the fight or flight, and the panic breathing, and the palms sweating, and so on. It can be very similar symptoms. And yeah, I have helped people who have had anxiety to overcome those anxieties, and to be able to get on with life, basically, to get on with life. That can sometimes be a bit harder, because you have to figure out what is it that's triggering this anxiety. Once you know what's triggering it, then you can work out where you learned to be triggered by it, and then you can resolve it. So sometimes that can take a bit longer, it can be a bit harder, simply because you're coming from a couple of steps further back. At least with a phobia, if someone comes and says, hey, I've got a phobia of pipe cleaners. I don't know where that came from, but there we go. I've got a phobia of pipe cleaners. Brilliant. So we know what it is that scares you. Let's figure out what taught you that and get rid of it. But if it's just anxiety, I don't know what triggers it. I don't know where it came from. I don't know any of it. I just know that I have this anxiety. You're kind of starting from a couple of steps further back. So naturally, it will take a bit longer. You need to do a bit more digging, a bit more uncovering and figuring out what's going on. But you can still get just as powerful results as by the end of it.
Beautiful. And then I have a really quick question. Have you ever had anybody who's had a phobia of cell phones?
I have not yet had someone who's had a phobia of cell phones, but hey, it could well happen. There is that thing that they've given it a name now, Nomophobia, which is, I don't know if you call it a phobia, but anxiety would certainly be a good way to describe it. It's that feeling of terror when you realize you haven't got your phone with you. And there are people who do have that. It's kind of like they almost feel like they're missing a limb or something because they're just so used to having the phone there, the instant connection with everyone. When it's not there, it's like, oh, huh. And that can be a source of anxiety for people as well. So, but I haven't come across someone so far who has a phobia of cell phones. But undoubtedly, there are people out there who have it. I would not be surprised.
Cool. Well, Keith, how can our listeners reach out to you?
Best way is if you just go straight to my website, which is keithblakemorenoble.com. All one word, no dashes or spaces or anything. keithblakemorenoble.com. You find out lots more about me there. There's some free gifts on there you can get hold of as well. Or if you prefer the socials, I'm on all the main social networking sites. Keith Blakemore Noble, you'll find me there. I'm blessed with being the only person on the planet with this name. So if you search for me in Google or any of your favorite search engine, whatever you find, good or bad, it's me. So, but yeah, go to the website. It's probably the best starting point, and you can get in touch through that as well.
Okay. We sure do appreciate you being with us today.
Hey, I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you both so much, Roy and Laurie. Loved it. It's been a really interesting chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, Keith, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.